Alright, here's another quick game in 3 minutes. This is pretty instructive. This revolved around, a square control. First thing we're dueling on the long diagonal. So, everything is going fairly standard. This is real standard Dutch defense. Okay. He was moving pretty quick, so bishop b4, castles, chop the knight. This is to try and really hold on to e4 as black as long as possible. So jumped it right in there, threatening to take on c3, fine. Castles, no problem. So he's trying to hammer me using the long diagonal. Now, I can play knight d6 and trade bishops if that's what he wants to do. Knight to d6, bishop takes b7, knight takes b7, and it's all even. Depends on what he really wants to do with that. But I'm like, whatever, I'm not worried about it. Let's go and just do it hardcore d5. And we're going to buttress the e4 knight with pawns. So, okay, he takes, I takes. Pretty basic. Got to take with pawn because he's got 3 attackers on my knight and I only had 2 defenders. Now I'm back to 3. He's like, okay, c4. Let's undermine a defender. Okay, so I have to add another defender. I could add the queen, but I'm going to play this. So he thinks he's got something here that's pretty clever, and winning-ish or something, It is clever, but I don't think it was that spectacular. Because I'm not afraid of this. I was like, okay, well, okay, you want to take my knight? That's, now what? He played e3. And I was like, well, heck, I'll just go ahead. I have another counter clever move. Let's see how good this is. Bishop, he's like trying to exploit my bishop's blockade of 3 pawns in front of it. With that e3 concept, I'm like, well, I'm just going to step to the side and take it, threatening your rook. So he's clever, I'm clever also. It's not a one-way street. That's actually a really good move. I'm like, okay, I took it, fine. Well, he has another clever move, but the difference is this. He does play a super clever move. I didn't anticipate this move. I didn't calculate it. Not a big deal, but the thing, it turns out to not be as good as it looks, although it is super clever. Bishop takes d5. I'm like, you jerk. That is, it could undermine your confidence. That's one of the powers this kind of move does. It's like, oh man, I'm an idiot. Not really. I didn't see it. Turns out I didn't have to see it. It's not really that good. It's just a solid move. I'm like, well, you know what? He's going to take my pawn with check. I need to take his bishop. Which is cool. Because when you go back, let me show you this. I'll go back. This is what you have to understand. I mean, it was super clever. We got to give him credit, man. That was awesome. But the point of playing my counter cleverness of bishop a6, rook e1, bishop takes pawn, is that in this position, the black's bishop on a6 is an inferior piece because of the pawns. Now, if I can get it to d3, it's pretty awesome. But generally speaking, its mobility is less. So it's, quote, the bad bishop. His bishop on g2 is a strong defender of his king. So trading a strong defender of your king for the opponent's restricted mobility bishop is generally not a good idea. Now, not always bad, but I'm just saying it's not usually good. Because now he's left with the junk bishop on dark squares blocked by dark pawns. And I don't have that problem. That problem is gone now. Oh, I don't care. So I believe his clever idea has backfired slightly, not much, but just very slightly. I would do this all day, like Captain America. So now what are you going to do? We already know that bishop only has 3 possible moves. He can't go to a3 right now because I would just jump on c8. You know, that really didn't do anything. So, I mean, he could go there. It doesn't matter. Whoops. Hit the wrong thing. It slipped off there. So we got back to this. Queen takes. Bishop a3 is fine. Rook c8. I told you I was going to jump on it. He goes there. And so I thought about this. I'm like, okay, now where does my knight belong? Got 3 squares you can go to. So I would pause the video and look at this a little bit. Don't take too long, but just look at it and see where you could go and work it out mentally. What kind of prospects you think this knight has from any of the squares of d7, c6, or a6. So pause the video if you need to, and then, you know, take as long as you need, but don't take more than a few minutes. It's not a big deal. And we're back. Okay, so here's the thingy. We can go to obviously all those squares. d7. From d7, you'd really probably go to f6, or you could go d7, f8, e6, g5, and f3. Nice if you could get there. He could stop that so easy. I didn't even worry about it. So we go to c6, and then you have e7, which is a bishop guards. That's not good. Or you have a5 from there. And also you have knight to a6, which gives you knight to b5, bishop chops, knight to c5, pawn chops, knight to c7. Okay, I guess. Nothing spectacular. Trying to go to c7 and b4, b5, attack his bishop. It's like, again, you're not really doing anything. To me, the obvious move, when you look at all the potentials, the best move is knight to c6, because knight a5 followed by knight a4, that is a clamp outpost square. When knight goes to c4, it only moves if a rook makes it move by rook takes knight. Otherwise, that knight ain't going anywhere. He cannot force the knight from c4. So we put knight on c4. My rooks are now free to do as they wish, because nothing, and I mean nothing, can make that knight move. No pawns, no other minor piece. This is known as knight versus bad bishop. Bad being blockaded, restricted by pawns of the same color. So we're almost in the end game. It's getting there. But the end game is going to be knight versus bad bishop, which is not good. So knight c6, really strong move. I mean, you know, like, even material, you know, yes, the material is even, but the mobility of the knight is way better than the bishop. And this is how you'd win this. See, he's really stuck. Rook c3, solid move. You can't go wrong. But the problem is he can't do anything. Because guess what? He's going to double on the c file. Well, whoop-de-doo. It doesn't matter. He thought about it for a while. This was really killing him. He got chewed up on the clock because he's realizing that, oh man, dude, this position stinks. Material is even. He's got 2 rooks on the only open file. It sounds good, but it's just absolutely horrible. Gee, I wonder what move black should play. Any ideas, people? You don't need to pause the video, please. Conceptually, we're going to put an eye on c4. What happens is, if you look at it this way, if you do it directly, it's not as good because his double rooks do become powerful if you move the knight. So he chopped 1 pair of rooks off. And that way, it lessens the potential power that he has. And now, locked down. His bishop is just locked out of the game. I mean, he could go to d6 and e5, but then I would just move up there, king to e6, and I'd threaten to take it. Well, if I take that, advantageously, he's dead. So he goes bishop c1. He's been wasting time. He's way down on time. This was a game in 3 minutes. So the time he spent doubling the rooks and what have you bid him. He didn't have time to do anything. I had way more time than him. And my position is so easy to play. Camp the knight on c4. Move my king, to whatever I feel like needs to happen. I go, well, I'm just going to go camp on f3 and just kind of inconvenience him. Just to keep him, whatever. It's just so depressing. Ooh, look. What's he threatening? He's threatening to try and, splinter my pawns. But that doesn't work. Sorry, dude. He can't play a5 to a threatening result because I would just take it. King f7. This is my dad's famous, and I mean this is his famous line. Hey, you got a black squared bishop. I'm going to stay on the white squares. He would do that. It was so awesome. We would play, oh my God, we played games back in the 70s. And every time that happened, he was like, ah, ha, ha, you got a bishop. I have a knight. I'm just going to stay on the square. You can't get me. What can you say? When he's right, he's right. So this is memories of my dad saying, hey, that bishop doesn't do jack. Now, it would be inferior for black to take this pawn with the knight. You're asking for trouble. You're letting him get activity for nothing. I like him in jail more than I like a pawn, okay? So, a5 by white, tremendous move. If you're stupid, he could get a whole kind of counter chances and possibly win because you have g7 and d5 as ultra weak pawns. Sorry, I wasn't born, as my friend would say, I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night. So, b5. And he's like, he doesn't have to take it. I mean, I could take it with the knight, with the pawn, but that's also bad. Because he'd jump on b3 and get on the b file. I'm like, no, you're in jail, bro. My knight and those two pawns at d5 and b5 are crushing his entire game. They're literally crushing his game. Don't let him out. a6. Some chance to, he's trying to play to attack the b pawn. So, not today, son. You're not getting out of there. My dad didn't raise an idiot. You're not going to let him have bishop have chances. Rook goes to f6. I'm not really threatening to take the pawn. I am, but I'm just trying to keep him locked up. And remember, his time is just, it's so down low. He was like under 30 seconds for the rest of the game, and he's just dead. So, hey, I'll threaten your whatever, dude. I'm not going to play knight d6. I'm going to play rook back there. His bishop cannot move to any good squares at all. So he's like, what happens? The best case scenario, he could play like bishop to a3. I could just outright take that bishop and shove that pawn right down his rook's throat. There's nothing he could do. Bishop a3, knight takes a3, rook takes a3, b4. He blockades it with rook b3, which is fine. My king is way closer, gets there first. I chop the a pawn, and he's toast. Trust me on this one. I'll show you. He comes there. I'm just trying to get my dudes. Hey, you know what my dad said? I'm going to stay on the opposite color, brother. Don't take a genius to figure this out. I went f7, e6, d7, c6. I'm not touching a black square if I don't have to. So, There's the pawn. Chop suey, because I defended my pawn with the king. Yeah, whatever, dude. See those white pawns? Your bishop is worthless. Right now, his bishop is a tall pawn. You know, the hammer's coming at A2. Check. What are you going to do? Ran out of time is what he did. He is, you know, the old phrase goes, he's busted. He's busted. There's nothing he could do. Down the road, he's going to have to sacrifice the bishop possibly for 2 pawns. And that is the end of his line. You know. He goes back. A5. I mean, these are just devastating. I'm going to play, you know, actually the way to win this. Oh, yeah, he is dog meat, dude. He is complete dog meat. I'm threatening right now rook b2. Oh, hell, dude. Not that. He can't go check. He had to go to e1. So let's not move him into fork. That's a rook. That's a knight fork. So I'm not trying to move him into cheap shots. That's disingenuous. We're trying to find the best and reasonable moves for the opponent to try and test our position and see if we really have what we think that we have. So yeah, king e1 was the right move. I mean, I moved to f1 without considering, you know, my own knight fork. We're not trying to cheap shot the guy. That's just rude. So here, king e1, the threat, we just go a5. The threat here is to play rook to b2. He has to trade rooks. And when the rooks are gone, this game is stone cold won for black. It is stone cold winning. There's nothing he could do. So that's the problem he's facing. He doesn't have anything that he could do. Let's just, you know, wait, do that move. Now we go here. Pawn. He could play rook to here. The point is, I'm trying to push the pawns without having the bishop sacrifice for both of them. So if he trades the rooks, it's just terrible. Because I'm going to play b4, king b5, king c4. There's nothing he could do. This would be better. He'd have resistance chances, and that also equals potential trick moves. Because you saw this guy played that tricky bishop takes e4. Man, what a good move that was. So this guy has got game. You cannot underestimate your opponent. You have to assume he's going to play well. So anyway, we do this. He's in bad shape. And this is the crusher. I've got 3 pieces. He's got 2, king and a rook. This bishop is a tall pawn doing nothing. Outside of potential, you know, cheap shot tactics that would be based upon mental laziness. He's just getting squash over. He's looking down a4, a3, a2, and then some combo that rolls in rook b1 combined with a2. This is nasty stuff. Okay, that's just nothing you could do. I mean, you know, there's nothing you could do. Look at this. This is terrible. This is what's going to happen. He can't stop any of it. The best he could do, I mean, oh, okay, you want to stop something? Stop this. Well, that doesn't stop anything. That's the problem. Rook A1, that stops nothing. You know, he goes, if he goes and leaves the pawn alone, I can chop those at will. I don't even have to do it. I think he's just dust. You know, this is going to force him to a bad square that I would take him at this point, because it's just now I'm threatening to win his. It's just horrible, man. This is just absolutely beyond trash. But this is the thing. The whole point of this game position revolved around the understanding. Go back here. When he doubled his, you know, when he moved that rook to c3. Sorry, rook to c1, which is the right move. That is absolutely the correct move. His only chances revolve around somehow controlling the C file. This is why I said you look at knight b7, knight c6, and knight a6. And it wasn't the move specifically, but the square that should be in your, when you look at this board, because you go, man, black bishop is terrible. The white squares are not affected by this bishop. So if we can stick a minor piece, usually is what it is. Usually it's a minor piece you want to stick on the outpost square, which is here. That you could stick a rook there, you could stick a knight there. Anything you stick there rules the position. The knight is usually better, obviously. So that's why I played knight c6, because I saw I'm going to go to a5. Whoops. There we go. You know, he doubled his rooks, as he should. You know, he went rook c3. I went knight a5. Because if I don't, I won't be able to move it again. So I have to get it. I have to get it to the sanctuary square of c4. This is the killer. He double. You know, I'm sorry, it's reverse. My bad. So he doubles rooks as he should. This guy played a lot of good moves. This is how you beat good players. You have to recognize they're playing good moves, but there is the possibility that they could lose because they're, you know, we had a positional advantage. I recognized this positional advantage was the knight versus bad bishop, and that the knight had a free move sequence to get to c4. The squares that the knight would like to be on is either c4, d3, or f3. c4 is the best square the knight could ever be on because it controls the only open file. It's the door. The knight is the door that blocks entry. That is the key. So once you understand what this position was transformed into after his super clever bishop takes e4, which made me think for maybe 10 seconds. But I realized faster than he did that was a mistake. It's a small mistake, but it's a strategic error is what it was. Didn't lose a pawn or anything like that, but it's a strategic error that gave him a long-term bad position. And you saw how easy black played versus white. White was struggling to maintain, the even position because he had a bad position and he recognized it, but he recognized it too late to do anything about it. He played the best moves possible, no question. But after knight c4, this game is all black. Even though the material was dead even. Until I decided to take his pawn once I moved my king to secure b5. Because everything, on white squares is owned by black. Now he's doomed. It doesn't matter. Nothing he can do. He could go to bishop to c5. Whoop-de-doo. It doesn't do anything. It does very little. Not nothing, but it does very little. Because this game is now those two passed pawns. Man, forget about it. White is lost. He's a pawn down and he's just dead lost. That's the thing that's really, bizarre. So, man, hopefully that this kind of positional lesson helps you out in the future. You guys know what to do. Talk to you later.